Hey guys, Mr. Duncan here with a quick review of basic operations with fractions. We're going to start with adding and subtracting. Um, when adding and subtracting fractions, the important thing to remember here is that you're going to need a common denominator. So the number on the bottom has to be the same if you want to add or subtract with fractions. You need a common denominator. That is because here I've got 13 sevenths and I have 3 halves here. We even say it like that, 13 sevens and 3 halves. That means I've got 13 1/7s and 3 1/2s, and I'm adding them together. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense because these aren't the same thing. Sevens and halves, how can I add them together um, if they're not the same thing? So what we're going to do is make them the same thing by having a common denominator. So in order to find a common denominator, what I need to do is first figure out what's called the least common multiple. And the least common multiple is something that 2 will go into and 7 will go into. So um, you can just look at this, hopefully, and figure out what the least common multiple of 7 and 2 is. But if you can't, then we can go through a little bit of a step here. So we can list them out. 7, 14, 21, 28, yada, 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 right? Those are all multiples of 7. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 multiples of 2. I noticed that the least common multiple is 14. So that's going to be my common denominator. So how do I make 7 into 14? Well, we can see times 2. 2 sevens is 14, right? So all I'm going to do is multiply by 2. But there's a problem here. I don't want to change 13 sevens. I need this to be 13 sevens. If I multiply the denominator by 2, that's changing it. Then it'd be 13 14ths. That's different than 13 sevenths, which is what we want. So I'm going to do this exact same thing to the numerator. The important thing here to realize is that this is just 1, right? 2 divided by 2 is 1. And anything multiplied by 1 is exactly itself. So the fact that I wanted to multiply the denominator by 2, I have to do the same thing to the numerator because this is just 1. It's not going to change it. 13 times 2 is 26. 2 times 7 is 14, which is just what we want. So same thing here. How do I change 2 into 14? Multiply by 7. But I can't just do that to the denominator. That'll change 3 halves. So I have to do the same thing on top. Again, 7 divided by 7 is 1. So I didn't change anything here by multiplying by 1. That's the important part. So 3 times 7, 21. 2 times 7, 14. Exactly what we wanted. And now these are both 14ths. I have 26 14ths here and 21 14ths here. They're the same thing. They're both 14ths. 26 plus 21 is 47, and you keep that because I have 26 14ths here, 21 14ths here, so total I have, sorry, that should be an addition. So total I have 47 14ths. So let's do another example right now. This one's pretty easy because the common denominator here is pretty obvious. Between 2 and 4, it needs to be 4. I literally don't even have to change this one. All I have to do is change this. 2 times 2 will be 4. That's what I want, but I have to do the same thing to the numerator as well. Again, this is 1. You can tell very simply that that's 1 because now we have 5/4, and then 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. I hope we all recognize that 2/4 is 1/2. I didn't change it, I just changed how it looked because I want the denominator to be 4 because now I have 5/4 and 2/4. So total, I have 5 plus 2, I have 7/4 in total. Now looking at subtracting here, it's a very, very similar thing. I can't subtract these because they're not the same. So I have to find a common denominator with 8 and 7. If you can't think of one right off the bat, an easy way to just do it is to just multiply these two. 8 times 7 is 56, right? So 56 is going to be my common denominator. So how do I make 856? Well, that's easy because I just did it. 8 times 7. If I do 8 times 7, I have to do the numerator as well. I get 7 times 5, 35. 7 times 8, 56. That's our common denominator. And how do I change 7 into 56? Multiply by 8. Same to the top. 8, 56. Made a mistake again here. Sorry about that. That's subtraction. 3556 minus 856 is 2756. Nice and easy. Here's a little wrinkle. This is a whole number, and I'm subtracting a fraction. How do I do that? Well, I can turn this guy into a fraction. First off, I know that he is 2 over 1, right? So I can think of him as 2 over 1 if you want. Again, you have to make the denominators common. So the least common multiple between 1 and 8 is clearly 8, because 1 times 8 is just 8. So I can do that. Multiply top and bottom by 8. You can see 16/8 is 2. That's another thing that you could just notice from the beginning. What's 2 in terms of eighths? 16/8. 16 divided by 8, that's 2. So minus 13/8 is 3/8, and you're done. Now to multiplying and dividing, I think that these are a little easier because multiplying and dividing, you don't need a common denominator. All you have to do is multiply the numerator and multiply the denominators. 8 times 7, 56. 7 times 10, 70. Normally you will always reduce. So let's see, that would be 28. That would be 35. You can even go farther because both of these are divisible by 7, right? So you can do, let's see, 4/5 if you divide both by 7. So same here. 5 times 1, 5. 4 times 3, 12. Don't forget this negative. And there you go, it's reduced. Problems here, when you have a whole number, you can always remember that whole numbers are just over 1. Anything divided by 1 is itself. So you can think of it like that and multiply numerators by numerators, denominators by denominators. What I like to do though is just know when you have a whole number, you multiply the numerator. -2 times 3, -6 sevenths. You just leave that one alone. Alright, last but not least, let's divide. So -1/2 divided by 5/4. So let's put this 1/2 divided by 5/4. Now this would be nice, although this looks ugly. Let's simplify this. I can't have fractions within a fraction. So what do I have to do to get this guy out of the denominator? Well, I can turn him into 1 by doing what? By the multiplicative inverse. Multiplicative inverse is what do you multiply something by to turn it into 1? In a fractions case, it's the reciprocal. So 5 times 4 is 20. 4 times 5 is 20. And 20 over 20 is 1. So now I don't have to worry about this. But again, I need to multiply top and bottom by the same thing because I don't want to change it. I need to multiply by 1. So I'm going to multiply the numerator by 4/5 as well. So -1 times 4 is -4. 2 times 5 is 10. This is reducible, -2/5. So that's the long ways of doing it. You might notice that all I did here was take this second, whatever we're dividing by, take the reciprocal of it, because that's going to get rid of it here, and then multiply the numerator by that. I can multiply the numerator by the reciprocal of the denominator. So that's a nice and easy step that we can take instead of all this junk going on here. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take the reciprocal. The reciprocal means the multiplicative inverse. You're just going to flop the numerator and the denominator. The reciprocal is just flopping it. So I have -1/5, and then I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal here. So I'm flipping this guy over. 4/7. And now I'm just multiplying like we know how to do. Numerator, -4. 5 times 7, 35. That's reduced. We're good to go. So just take the reciprocal of the denominator and multiply.